Greetings and welcome to STEM Inspired, where we utilize personal stories and experiences to interest the possibility of a STEM profession in adolescence.
I'm your host, Jacobs Nest.
Today on the show we have a systems engineer. He built bikes, also built a pushcart, and has a passion for building. Please give a warm welcome to Michael Romios. Could you tell us your name and what you do for a living?
Yeah, my name is Michael Romios, and I'm a systems engineer. The company I work for is Integrity Engineering and Design.
What do you do exactly at your job?
For the past several years, most of the products I've been working on have to do with developing the environmental control systems for large commercial aircraft. So the airplanes you'd fly domestically or internationally as an average Joe public person. So on those planes, the environmental control system is really like the heating, cooling, and ventilation system for the cabin, the cockpit, the crew areas, and so forth. And so what a systems engineer does is when you're developing a large system like that, or let's say flight control system, or a radar system or anything of that nature, there's a lot of parts to it. So in the environmental control system, there's valves and heat exchangers and computer controllers. And so to make sure that it all works together and is integrated properly and meets the requirements of the aircraft overall, we start at the highest level developing requirements that the system has to meet. Because all these parts have to work together, the requirements are sort of at a high level, as I said, and the systems engineer job is through a process called validation and verification. We break down those requirements into smaller and smaller parts so that by the time it gets down to let's say a valve or some other component, the team or the individual who's designing that component has very specific requirements for him to design that part. But if we did our job right as a systems engineer, when that part is put back into the system, everything's going to work as intended and meet the overall requirements for the entire aircraft. So that's what a system engineer is. And I've been doing that for maybe 15 years now.
And what is the best part about your job?
I think one of the most rewarding things is that it's realized in the end. You know that what you're working on, you're contributing to something that's, these are planes that are going to fly every day, carry, hundreds of passengers every day. And, there's a lot of people that make that happen. I'm just a small part of it. But, just that feeling of contributing to something that is realized every day is a very rewarding feeling.
Did you ever have an interest in airplanes when you were younger?
Not necessarily airplanes. I mean, anything mechanical was always really cool to me. When I was young, in the summertime when we were out of school, we would spend a lot of time outside. We rode our bikes everywhere, and we would always be taking them apart and tuning them up and putting them back together and swapping out parts. And it's where I learned a lot about how to use tools and how things worked. Really, I think sparked a lot of my interest. At one point, I probably had 3 or 4 bikes and maybe enough spare parts to make 3 or 4 more bikes. I think at one point we tried to build a little coaster, you just push it down the hill. We were just always really interested in using tools and using our hands and, creating things, making things and creating things. And ultimately that's a big part of what engineering is. It's creating things. I think, as a kid, that's what we were really interested in, was just making stuff, and it was just kind of learning that whole mechanics of how things worked and being able to take things apart and put them back together and swap out parts. And I think that was kind of the incubator, that kind of got me interested in all sorts of things mechanical.
What advice or information would you give children who would like to enter a STEM profession?
If you look around, there's science and engineering pretty much in everything. Whatever you're passionate about, whatever you really like to do, more often than not, there's going to be some science or engineering behind it or involved with it. And I think if you just open your mind and recognize that, it'll draw you into science and engineering. You don't have to be necessarily really interested in physics or chemistry or something like that. If you're interested in sports, there's science and technology behind that. The physiology of the human body and how the human body is able to do certain things. Of course, that's science behind it, right? Or how a pitcher is able to manipulate the baseball to curve it or do different things. There's a lot of physics behind that.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you enjoy music, how does an instrument manipulate the sound and make vibrations to create music? It's all science behind it. So whatever you're passionate about, whatever you really enjoy doing, if you look at it from a certain perspective, you'll see there's science and technology behind it. And so to a young person, I would say it's important to have goals. And when you realize something you're passionate about, find what you really enjoy doing, follow through with that and take it as far as you can. Sometimes that's going to mean sacrificing other things or taking risks. But if it's something you really enjoy doing, then the rewards will outweigh the risks. It may lead you to a science or engineering career.
Thank you for taking the time to share your story, and it was really inspiring to see your childhood and to where you are now.
Thank you, Jacob. I'm glad I was able to help, and I just want to thank you for what you're doing too. I think it's really cool to inspire younger generation into science and technology. I think it's important younger kids will get interested in it. So thank you.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed our program. STEM Inspired is a project of BC STEM Ventura County's cross-sector network to improve educational outcomes in the STEM fields from early learning to career. STEM Inspired is generously funded by Arconic, Innovation Engineered. Please join us next time as we continue to dive into the lives and experiences of STEM professionals. As always, I'm Jacob Zinaz. Discover new things. You never know when an interest can become a passion that can change the world. This has been STEM Inspired.